Welcome back to the final Rebels Edge of 2024. I am John Najarian, be joined today by Justin Nugent. And remember, these Rebels Edge, it's not an option to miss them, folks. So make sure you always tune in. We will be announcing that new show that we've teased you about in the very near future in 2025. But for today, a market that started off higher and then went lower. We'll have our 411 on all of that right after this. Bang! Welcome, Justin. How the heck is Hawaii today?
Amazing as always, John.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
Yep.
That, by the way, is the list of all the topics we're going to cover today, folks. And Justin Nugent and I, even though it's a not necessarily holiday shortened day, except for bonds, as Justin pointed out just before we got on air, but we will have a full trading session today. But you got to think, Justin, that a lot of the folks are gone already, probably left within the first hour of trade, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And, honestly, I think most of the people probably left a little more than a week ago and did not plan to come back today on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, I would think the same. They're already celebrating down here in Puerto Rico, and we are an hour ahead of the East Coast because we don't observe daylight saving time, Justin. So the great news for us is we're Atlantic time zone here, not Eastern time zone. So half the year we're on Eastern time, and the rest of the year we're an hour ahead, which gives me a nice head start on everybody. Yeah. Sort of the opposite of your end, Justin.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes we're an hour behind, but we don't do the daylight savings time thing either, which is nice. I like that. No one should.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Macro Minute, folks, and ho, ho, no. That's what we're calling this, the lack of the Santa Claus rally, because as I said, we started out making a recovery in the pre-market, and once we began trading, we were initially higher, but all three major indices have bled off. So that's going to be my macro for today, Justin.
Yeah, traders getting coal instead of gains. And I just want to note the last time that we were on Rebels Edge together last week, I said, hey, pullbacks are okay. We're probably going to get one. We've been talking about this since 6:07. We talked about this in the cocktail hour. Huge bad breadth in the market hasn't been fixed. So honestly, I think we could go a bit lower before we see some buying.
I would agree. I think we are likely, in fact, to see a number of stocks. And just a real quick little prepper for you folks. Most of you know what tax loss selling is. Tax loss selling is where somebody who's been on the wrong side of the market wants to recognize that loss. Now, it could come from a short recognizing a loss. It could come from a long recognizing a loss. In other words, I bought the stock at 60 and now it's 40. I can recognize that $20 loss if I take it before the calendar year ends. However, you can't get back in for 30 days. So what we generally see is a lot of tax loss selling that carries us into literally the end of trade today. And then people can't buy it for 30 days. But many of these stocks that get depressed, because of course, most people's losses are on stocks that they bought rather than stocks that they shorted. It's can be a very tough thing for them to get back in, because 30 days from now, who knows what kind of market we're going to have. And if you're somebody, for instance, who had that SMCI, super microcomputer, and you were pumping it out here at the bottom, at 30 bucks a share or whatever, that's not the bottom, but a bottom. Many of those folks will try to get back in, but if they buy in before the 30 days are up, the wash sale rule cancels that trade. It cancels the recognition of that loss. And it would work the same way on a short too. Just throwing it out there for you guys. All right. Justin, I'm going to hit Fantastic Futures quickly and talk about this shooting star pattern, because MicroStrategy, which means, of course, Michael Saylor, he pulls the strings over there. He bought another 2,138 Bitcoin. That takes his total to 446,000 Bitcoins. But some people are saying, were it not for Michael Saylor, maybe we'd be a lot closer to 73,000 than we would to be where we are right now at 94,000 to the Bitcoin in US dollar terms. Do you A, agree with that, or B, do you have another future you'd like to take a look at, Justin?
Man, both. I'm gonna try and be quick. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I think MicroStrategy can go to a little bit lower as well. They're like down 44% off the highs. I like them at 200. I don't think that Michael Saylor is the real reason why Bitcoin pumped. I think we have an incumbent president to thank for that and the possibility of a Bitcoin strategic reserve. And I don't even think that Bitcoin has to dump all that hard to match MicroStrategy. They've been decoupled pretty well. But this is his 8th consecutive week of buying, so that's interesting. Two fantastic futures to point out. The 10-year is up over 4.5. Gross. If it comes up to 5, probably see some more selling. And also the VIX, despite some of the pullbacks that we've seen, the VIX is hovering around 17. I reminded us last time, I would not forget about that big VIX buyer. They're still here, shark in the waters, lurking. They're ready. They're waiting for that next big pump. And if we get some panic, especially as people come back into the market, if they start selling a little bit, that VIX could pump as well.
Sure could. 50 Cent would love to see that. That's that trader, folks, that Justin and Pete and I talk about a lot, that is a habitual buyer of calls or call spreads in the VIX that explode very quickly, and they also shrink very quickly. So he or she has already made a big profit on one of these expansions of volatility. We'll see if they get another one, because they have both January and February VIX contracts on right now. All right, let's talk about apartment investment management. This one, AIV, is up about 7%. They're going to be selling some buildings down there in one of the hottest real estate markets in the United States. Miami, in particular, Brickell area of Miami, and they're going to sell $520 million worth of properties. That's a pretty big trade, wouldn't you say, Justin?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is another example of the smart money getting in early, but not in the form of options. On September 24th, people started noting that this stock was popping up on scans for unusual stock volume, about 6 times higher than usual, over 570% higher. On November 11th, same thing. And that just kept happening. And when you see that in a stock that you're not really sure has any catalysts and you're not really sure why they're buying it, it's usually a sign that you should start to look really, really closely, because maybe somebody knows something and they're accumulating shares of it. It's not surprising to see it up today.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting trade per se, but I would say it is just that, a trade, because now they're going to have, obviously, they can deploy that capital into new investments. They may have already sort of lined some of those up, I guess, Justin. But selling this will be pretty interesting, because if the buyer of these apartments decides they can use seller financing, I don't think they will, because the seller financing is 12%. But if they can't line up financing, the buyer of this, who would be coming to apartment investment management to say, okay, I'll take that 12% for 18 months, that's pretty rich. I think they'd struggle to make that a profitable investment for those 18 months. So don't look for that to happen. All right. Let's talk about FTAI, because FTAI Aviation, basically, they're out here guiding 2025, and they're guiding it pretty positively. What do they do? Well, if you've ever been in an Airbus A320 or the NEOs, as they're known, these are airplanes that they own a lot of. And apparently, they are going to be out there. There are aircraft leasing companies like this one, folks, that have, huge demand for these aircraft that they own and then they lease out. And obviously, as rates go up, unless you've locked in a certain rate, they can charge more and more for that lease. So many of these airlines that we talk about do not own all of their aircraft. They might own some, but in many cases, they are trying to lease them so they can maximize their return on capital. And in this case, FTAI is moving to the upside pretty strong on this news.
Yeah, and man, what a great time to own the thing that aren't Boeing 737-800s. This is not me trying to make light of any sort of awful thing, because it's truly tragic, but it's been a very, very, very deadly, tragic year for commercial air travel, and it's pretty much all Boeings that have been, at fault. So if I own the other big type of airplane, I'm hyped to be able to lease these out. The only other thing I want to say about FTAI is this is one where I have to take my licks. I had spotted some bearish activity in FTAI. I had followed it, and that was a situation where the smart money did have an opportunity to get out, and maybe they did, but I did not. And that is why it's so important to take your losses, to use options so that those don't come up hard against you, and to be disciplined. So I'm taking an L, just like our next stock is pretty nasty.
Yeah, well, that next stock is named Dave. And Mark Cuban is a seed investor in Dave. It's a fintech company, folks. You might not have heard of it, but it is, or it was, $1 billion company. It's falling pretty hard today after a pretty nice run to the upside. I mean, the stock was up over $100 a share in the past few weeks, and now seeing a pretty significant double-digit pullback today. Basically, the Department of Justice has indeed referred them, or rather the Federal Trade Commission, I'm sorry, I misspoke, has referred to the Department of Justice, the DOJ, some of their marketing practices that they think weren't very, shall we say, straight. And so for that reason, they have some splaining to do to some of the regulators, and maybe some big fines to be paid, all the way down to the chairman of the company, the guy that founded the company, this guy named Wilk, who co-founded Dave. They're going after him, not just the company. They're going after him. So this is a pretty aggressive FTC, Federal Trade Commission, to refer this over to DOJ, and obviously the stock bearing the brunt of this hit today.
Yeah, I mean, when a stock rips down into a level of support like that, usually it means it's going to break right through it if it rips right down to it. I would just say this, given how much revenue the company generates in tips and fees, the fact that they're immediately eliminating optional tips and express fees from their extra cash product tells me there's probably some extra headwinds to come here, and we could probably see those around earnings. I like this name maybe around 65. They have another support there, but probably not here. Wouldn't be buying dip just yet in Dave.
I was looking at the same sort of support level, believe it or not, Justin. I have no position in the stock right now, folks. But they basically, in the fintech space, they have an app where they're saying, hey, consumers can get up to $500 without any hidden fees practically instantly. And then the Federal Trade Commission heard from a number of customers that alerted them and said, hey, they're advertising this and they're not doing it. So what do you think about that, FTC? And the FTC examined it and said, we couldn't find anybody who was getting an instant bang of $500 into their account from this app. And the charges or fees, like Justin said, that many of these borrows, if you will, were supposed to be, again, without fee, are one of the things that's a red flag for the FTC, and enough so that they refer it over to the DOJ. All right, a lot of turnover in that stock today too. Lastly, how about this one, Justin? You got to be happy that you don't have SGMO, SGMO, in your account, because if you did, folks, the stock is down more than 50% 50% today. The stock began the year about $40. It blew all the way into the mid $2 range, which again, those numbers sound small, but if you think of it, into the mid twos means you've got a 5x return. Obviously from 40 cents up to 240 or whatever the high was. Well, Pfizer decides to terminate their global collaboration and license agreement. So the stock falls pretty hard. Still not back down to 41 cents, but it is back down to $1.
Yeah, I don't have SGMO, but it almost looks like it could start. Yeah, yeah. It almost looks like it could start being appetizing, though. They're one of the only gene editing names to do all right this year. A lot of them have kind of been dumping. There's some decently high price targets, but you know how those go. It doesn't really matter a ton. HC Wainwright is looking at their Fabry program, which we're going to hear some updates about. And when stocks are so washed out like this, little positive catalysts can give them a jolt. And the only other thing that I think is kind of interesting down at these lows is that they now have a BLA ready hemo program from that they're ready to resell starting in April. So I would imagine that we'll probably start hearing some express talks and interests to come through from other potential buyers who are not Pfizer, which again could boost the stock. I don't know if I'd get it here, but if it starts to stabilize out, it might be an interesting little bet at the bottom.
Sure. And a lot of us are tempted, I think, when we see $1 stocks, especially if they have a $1 stock for an investigational gene therapy that could be a multi-billion-dollar product. Obviously, Pfizer decided they didn't believe so. Doesn't mean that they're right. But there's a lot of smart people at Pfizer, so I'd be careful betting against them. All right, let's do a little Pete's Red Zone Sports, shall we? Even though Pete's not here, Justin and I are going to talk about 3 topics quickly. Caitlyn Clark, because she is the female athlete of the year. Caitlyn Clark, of course, for her monster contract that she got, for all the press that she brought to the WNBA. Keep in mind, folks, that the WNBA is owned by the NBA primarily, and they do have individual owners of these franchises and so forth, but the NBA has carried this as a loser on its books for years. This might be one of the first times that they almost, I don't know if they did, but they might almost turn a profit, Justin. And if they do, it's mainly on the shoulders of Caitlyn Clark.
Yeah, she brings a lot of eyes to women's college basketball. I think the game with the Louisiana State Tigers averaged 9.9 million viewers, which is obviously huge for the WNBA. And it's just good to see her getting her kudos, because I know that for a little while social media was really hating on her. I'm not in WNBA politics or anything like that, so I didn't know, but I saw that there were some people kind of pushing her around and everything like that, so it's good. One fun fact about her: did you know that she played on the boys team growing up?
No, I did not, but certainly her game looks different than most of the WNBA players. And she has taken her lumps, because there's been a lot of shoving, and it's almost like a movie when I watch it, Justin. Here's a person who comes in as the most loved player of perhaps all time in women's basketball, and a lot of the other players in the league were treating her pretty roughly, at least to start, but she just played on. She didn't say, hey, there might be some black on white prejudice going on here or anything else. She just said, hey, it's part of the game. I'm going to play. And I think that was another reason that people loved her. She wasn't making excuses. And she certainly would have, I think, been a great addition to their Olympic team. But again, I don't pick that team. Somebody else does. How about this? The male athlete of the year, Justin, Shohei Otani. And obviously, one of the big reasons that they won the World Series this year, they have great pitching with the Dodgers. He moved up, of course, from the Angels to the Dodgers, but this is the 3rd time that he's been the male athlete of the year winner. And that says a lot, does it not, Justin?
It absolutely does. And this is just somebody who's been a phenom their whole life. It's crazy. Reportedly, he could throw a 100-mile-per-hour ball in high school, which is just insane. And also, he comes from an athletic family. His dad played semi pro, his mom was an accomplished badminton player. So, this is just a guy born with talent who then worked on it and, used that thing that you guys talk about all the time, that discipline to just hone it and become truly like a world-class master. It's
He
inspiring.
is, and very deserving guy, and was able to overcome even some of those. I don't know if I'll call it a scandal, but somebody was gambling in his name. It might have been his translator. Again, I'm not accusing. I'm just telling you guys what we've seen in the press. But despite that, his numbers are so awesome, and he didn't even pitch this year, and yet as a DH, the guy just lit it up. And he and Aaron Judge are two of the shining stars of these young players in the Major League Baseball.
Were they
All right.
allegedly Oh, sorry, I just had a
No,
question.
no,
Do
no.
you
Go
know
ahead.
were they allegedly betting on him or against him?
The person was gambling, allegedly not on his games or anything,
Oh, okay.
but the translator was alleged to be the person that basically got his hands on millions of dollars of Otani's money, and was making bets. What those bets were, again, I don't know. But Major League Baseball loved this guy, and apparently they were satisfied with the outcome of who was placing those bets, and if they were on sporting events or if they were on other things. All right, one more just to close out the year. This lady, Hildy, she ran a marathon every day of 2024. Now, she ran a total, I guess, of something like 15,000 kilometers worth of racing, folks, because obviously she has to be an ultra marathoner. She was hit by crowds who, leaned in too far or walked across the street during a marathon, whatever it might be. And she's had injuries and all the rest, but she has run a marathon every day in 2024. And she raised over $62,000 for breast cancer by doing this. Seems like a small amount, really, given how big an accomplishment this is as a world record. But wow, Hilde, fantastic job. What do you have to say? Have you ever run a marathon?
No, man, I would love to, though. I ran a little bit in high school and stuff like that. But man, did you say 2,000?
She ran, let me see, she ran.
Oh, no, I meant raised.
Oh, she raised 62,000.
62. Jesus.
Yeah.
I thought you said 2,000. I was like, wow. Oh, God. Yeah. We're doing it wrong. No, that's.
Yeah. I think by getting the word out about this, more people might actually contribute to her. Her last name is spelled Dosogne. She's a runner out of Belgium. But can you imagine running a marathon every day for an entire year? She just completed it, of course, today.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly inspiring. It's really, really incredible to keep persevering through it all. I'm sure once you get to the end of that and you stand up, you feel like you're going to fall over on your walk to the microwave. So it's truly very, very impressive.
Just crazy. Well, folks, we appreciate all of you joining us. We will have a big announcement coming, and we appreciate that all of you might be part of that new show with us. Again, that little right down there, that's right, that right there, that QR code will get you registered for Vegas, March 22nd, 2025. Justin will be there, I'll be there, Pete will be there, Grant Cardone will be there, a bunch of our coaches will be there, as well as Bryn Talkington, I think Charlie Gasparino again, Liz Clayman. It'll be great, and I hope you can join us. Click that link, and you could be part of the rebellion. You can also just type in marketrebellion.com/RebelCon, REBELCON. Well, Speaking of see ya, I'll be seeing all of you on the other side. Justin, thank you so much for all your great work this year.
Thank you so much.
Boom.